What's up, everybody? My name is Tucker. In today's video, we're going to be talking about the New Orleans Pelicans. If you enjoyed the video, leave a like rating on it. Check out my socials at the top of the screen, and let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so it kind of seems like the theme of the week this week in the NBA is dysfunctional teams. We talked about the Minnesota Timberwolves the other day as they fired their head of their front office unexpectedly. We've talked about the Philadelphia 76ers all off season with how they've handled the Ben Simmons trade. Some of Doc Rivers' comments publicly just hasn't been a great offseason for Philadelphia. And in today's video, we're going to be talking about the Pelicans. And we've talked about them in terms of the Zion situation and the possibility of him leaving when his rookie contract is over. We've talked about the possibility of them trading Brandon Ingram, but now there's been some new information about the front office as a whole and some dysfunction that's certainly occurring there, most of it revolving around David Griffin. Some staffers going as far to even call him David Krause, referring to Jerry Krause from the Chicago Bulls of The Last Dance, where he was good at his job initially, and he obviously built up very, very good basketball teams, but he didn't build good relationships within the organization, and then ultimately decided to tear down a dynasty that didn't really need to be torn down. Now, there's no dynasty here in New Orleans to tear down, but I think more so those comments are just referencing his relationship with the rest of the members in the front office, and it's certainly not a good one. And this also leads, of course, to a lot of the Zion stuff, where he has been unhappy with, or he was unhappy with the rehab plan when he was a rookie, where they were holding him out of a lot of games, and it was taking him a long time to actually play. There was some frustration there, which makes sense, which is natural, but when you combine it with all the other Zion stuff that we're now hearing about as well, like I said, some of the front office dysfunction, him not being happy with the fact that they are a smaller market team. There were reports months and months and months ago that his family wanted Zion out of New Orleans, that they did not think that it was a good situation for him. And again, the possibility of him leaving when his rookie deal runs out. Now, none of that Zion stuff is new, but some of the stuff about David Griffin is. And basically what's happening here is a picture is being painted of a guy that nobody really likes, nor do they really think he knows what he's doing. And you go back to Griffin's championship run with Cleveland, where he was in charge of certain aspects of the front office there. Now, granted, there was never any shortage of drama in Cleveland during his tenure, but from a front office perspective, outside of the obvious advantage of having LeBron James on the roster, he did a good enough job to bring a title to Cleveland. And he was brought to New Orleans partially because of that championship experience and because of being an experienced front office member, because when he was brought in, they had to deal with the Anthony Davis situation, and they needed someone that they felt confident in, that they were going to be competent and they were not going to screw up the Anthony Davis thing. And initially from an asset standpoint, he definitely didn't screw it up. They got a ton in return for Anthony Davis, sending him to LA. Probably that's about as close to max value in exchange for either Anthony Davis or a player like Anthony Davis that you could get or that anybody's ever gotten. Not all the assets have worked out especially well, but the thing that he was brought in to do initially, he did a pretty decent job of. Brandon Ingram has developed into a borderline all-star caliber player at just 24 years old, I believe. Still a young player, someone that's going to continue to grow and improve. His fit alongside Zion is a question, but he certainly, as the focal point asset of that trade, has absolutely delivered. Some of the other players haven't done a ton for them. They've obviously got the future draft assets that have yet to be used. But the big one they missed out on here, in my opinion, and that kind of spills into what happened for them this offseason, is Lonzo. Because similar to Zion, basically, from the time that Lonzo got there were rumors that he didn't want to be there. It wasn't a place or a city or a team he was especially interested in playing for. And he ended up growing and developing into a really interesting combo guard that could facilitate, became a much better shooter last year. And he was supposed to be a focal point asset of that Anthony Davis trade, and it became a real asset. And ultimately, they basically just let him leave for, in my opinion, basically zero compensation in return as he went to Chicago in a sign and trade this offseason. So there's a pattern developing here of players just not being especially happy in New Orleans. And I don't want to place all of that on David Griffin himself. I don't think that he necessarily is the sole reason that these players just aren't necessarily endearing themselves to the city or to the team, but it has to be something that you have to account for given some of these reports that are coming out about Griffin's relationship with the front office. And the thing that's really damaging for him is not appearing to be a competent member of the front office, because he has the pedigree, he has the championship experience, but he was also brought in because people thought that he was going to be good at his job. And for the most part, he just hasn't been. Nobody's going to be perfect. Building an NBA team is an imperfect situations, imperfect thing to try and do. But when you look at this offseason specifically, everything they did either reversed what they did the offseason before in terms of trying to remedy the mistakes that they made, or was a negative. So a negative, for example, would be losing Lonzo in the sign and trade and not really getting anything back for him. And as a way to make up for that, then sending out assets in exchange for Devontae Graham in a sign and trade, a player that is good but is not as good as Lonzo and was definitely like plan C for them after they made some salary cap clearing moves trying to go out and get someone like Kyle Lowry. Some of those salary cap clearing moves were only necessary because of some of the moves that were made last offseason, most specifically trading for Steven Adams and immediately signing him to a contract extension. They've just made a lot of moves, but for some reason have really been limited in terms of the progress that they've made over the last couple of seasons under David Griffin. And that's just never going to go well if you're a GM of a team. It's not to mention the fact that they've already gone through a few different head coaches in Griffin's tenure, the most recent being Stan Van Gundy, which was pretty much a disaster from the time that he started. The young guys didn't listen to him at all. He was trying to get them to guard and play defense. It didn't happen, and he was gone after just a year. So now they've got a new head coach, some questions about the roster, a roster that's objectively worse at certain points than the one that didn't even really contend all that heavily for a play-in appearance last year. And basically what all this is leading to for Griffin himself and potentially for the New Orleans Pelicans franchise as a whole is this is it. Like, this year is going to decide pretty much everything about the future of this team. If they are good this year and they make the playoffs and they look like an up-and-coming and exciting team, things change dramatically for them. Maybe Zion suddenly starts to see himself having a future in New Orleans and signing that long-term contract extension to secure himself financially, and then also be on a team that he thinks has a legitimate future. Maybe that's something that ends up happening if this is a good season for them. Maybe some of the moves that Griffin made this offseason creates a better environment from a chemistry standpoint, and guys fit together better than they did last year, and he starts to get credit for that. He keeps his job. They don't have to worry about significant roster changes by trading away someone like Brandon Ingram. However, if things go poorly this year, and from poorly, I mean like the bar's pretty high here. Like if they're not even contending for a play-in spot again next year, I think that's pretty much seen as a disaster from in terms of what the owners are looking for this season. That could spell, the Zion rumors are going to be at an all-time high if they once again don't even make the play-in this year. Griffin's probably fired. They're probably looking at some significant roster turnover, potentially involving Brandon Ingram trades. It might be another head coach again. And quite frankly, I've said this before, but like if New Orleans can't make it work as a franchise, not as a city, if they can't make it work with Anthony Davis initially, they win one playoff series with him, they lose him, and then Zion Williamson as well, two of the most talented players that have come into the league over the last 15 years. If they can't make it work with either of those guys and put together a competent team and be a consistent playoff performer, then the team is probably not long for the city of New Orleans, quite frankly. It doesn't seem like a place that is conducive to, for whatever reason, whether it be in the past, it's been issues with the medical staff and guys getting hurt constantly. There just appears to be dysfunction, and at some point, maybe this team ends up, moving to Seattle or whatever the case may be. I would not be surprised at all if, not necessarily after next year, but if things continue to go downhill, we're looking at a relocation thing, and the future of the New Orleans Pelicans franchise as a whole is potentially at stake here. Now, I say all that to say I don't want to put all of the blame for the negative things that have been happening with the Pelicans. I don't want to put it all on David Griffin, because, like I said, it's an imperfect job. There's a lot of things that have to go right for you, and some of the players just have to play better as well. They have to be more committed defensively. They have to be more committed to sharing the ball and to improving other aspects of their game. Absolutely. It's not, David Griffin's not the one actually playing basketball here. However, when you go into a situation where the Anthony Davis situation was weird, but it put you in a position to really build something special and get a lot of assets in exchange for Anthony Davis. You did that. Then you get super lucky by getting the first overall pick, not just in a draft that you didn't have very good odds of getting the first overall pick, but in a draft that involves Zion Williamson as the first pick. That is an incredible stroke of luck for a franchise. And if you're a competent general manager, you're supposed to be able to take advantage of things. When things go right for you, you have to be able to take advantage of those things. And to this point, they just haven't. Now, given the injury stuff with Zion in his first year really slowed down some of their progress as a team. Last year, he was awesome, but they just couldn't figure it out altogether as a team. And maybe our timeline is too accelerated, and we're expecting too much too soon of this team, and we need to give them time to grow and develop together. But it's just not how the NBA works in 2021 anymore. It's just not. There's not a lot of patience being given out for general managers, for coaches, for players that are a part of a young core because that patience isn't being returned. Players aren't waiting around for teams to figure it out. If you don't figure it out in 2 or 3 years, they're going to decide to go and try and find a team that is going to figure it out for them. So it might seem dramatic and it might seem quick to be thinking about David Griffin getting fired and a lot of dramatic things happening in New Orleans. But based off these reports that have been coming out about Griffin and the situation of the team as a whole, I don't really think it's dramatic at all. I think it's just the way the NBA is now in the modern game. But yeah, that's going to be the end of today's video, and I thank you guys very much for watching. Once again, my name is Tucker. If you missed any of my previous videos, be sure to check out the boxes on screen. Check out my socials up there at the top of the screen as well. And yeah, hope you guys have an awesome rest of your day, and I will see you all next time.